Okay, are we ready to get started again? So session 2 here is on a different topic. So we're covering quite a bit in terms of content, right? So there's a lot of breadth involved here in what we're talking about. But also remember, I hope one of the big takeaways from the session is not just what we're talking about, but it's also about the delivery. So it's about how we're doing it. Okay, so the topic is differentiated instruction. We're going to start with another warm-up activity. Okay, hopefully some of these activities are new, something different that you can use in your own trainings or classes. Okay, and they can be modified for different purposes, of course. Okay, so this activity is called Pass the Mic. So for the activity, you have to be with a group. You can go get together with your original group members, so that 5 or 6 that you had at the beginning. Okay? What you're going to do is you'll be in a circle or as a group, not in a line. Okay? So where you can pass a mic between you. Okay, you're going to take turns clockwise asking a question about a picture. So I'll give you a picture prompt. You're going to ask a question about the picture. It should be an information question. So it should be a who, what, where, when, why is kind of hard, but it could also be a how question, but not a close-ended question. Okay? After you've asked the question, you're going to pass the mic to the next person, clockwise. So if you have the mic, you're the speaker. So the next person's going to answer your question, ask another question, pass the mic. Okay, so you continue to pass the mic around the circle that you have. I'm not going to actually give you a microphone though. Okay, because if we have every group with a microphone, we can't hear each other. Yes, so you create your own microphone. That could be a pen, yes. Okay, or a pencil, or a cell phone, or something that you can pass around. Okay, you're going to continue until the timer goes off. I'll have a timer, but I'm not going to show you the time. When the timer goes off, you don't want to be the person who's holding the microphone. Okay, so don't hold on to the microphone too long. Okay. Okay, so can you get with your group? You might want to stand up for this and then decide one microphone. Who's going to start with the mic? Time is up. Okay, so you can do this in 2 different ways. You can do it where it's competitive, right? Where whoever's holding the mic, you're out, but then you don't have any more opportunities for speaking practice, okay? So usually students are back in, even if they were holding the mic, okay? And then you move on to another picture. Okay, do you want to do one more? Okay. Okay, here's the next picture. Stop. If you were stuck holding the mic, you're out. Okay, so this could go on for several rounds, okay? We'll just do those 2 rounds for now. So you can have a seat again. Thank you. Okay, so you're certainly asking information questions, right? So it can be practice for information questions. But then it can also be targeted based on whatever pictures you use, right? So you could have themed pictures, whether it's related to school or classrooms, or if it's related to how we purchase our food, right? So related to vocabulary that you want to be working on. Okay. Okay, so session 2, we're talking about differentiated instruction a bit. Similar objectives. So understanding more about the benefits of using differentiated instruction, experience a variety of ways to differentiate instruction, and then considering how we can adapt it to our contexts. Okay, we have an image here. Considering this image, can you explain what it means? Just turn to the partner next to you and explain what you think this image means. Okay, and then we're thinking, how does this connect to differentiated instruction? Would anybody like to share their description of the picture? Anybody want to share what you explained or how this connects to differentiated instruction? Yes.
Okay, based on the equality picture, so let's assume they are students, okay, so students of different height, but they are given a same level of platform, but still the shorter person cannot reach the apple, right? So when we look at the equity, so the shorter person is given a higher platform so that he can achieve, get the apples. So here what it means that maybe weaker students need more help. So the advanced student just assist them a little bit, then they can grab their apples. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, great. So we see a difference in students, right? But they're given the same thing. Okay, so if the students are different, but they're given the same thing, they're trying to achieve the same goal or objective, they cannot reach. Okay, so if we adjust what they're given, right, in order to reach the same goal, then they can achieve the outcome. Okay, so it's demonstrating the difference between equality and equity. Equality is giving everybody the same thing. Equity is being able to achieve the same thing, so equal access. Okay, so this is what differentiated instruction is trying to do, right? So provide equal access to the same outcomes. Okay, so we're talking about differentiated instruction, different learning styles, and creating inclusive classrooms. So differentiated instruction is the process of changing the lesson so that it meets the needs of diverse learners, students that are different. Okay, students are different or diverse in many different ways. Okay, one way is the way that they learn. So they might have a preferred or a dominant learning style. Okay, so we have 4 predominant learning styles: visual, auditory, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. Okay. As instructors, we want to create inclusive classrooms, right? So differentiated instructions is a way of helping to create inclusive classrooms. So inclusive classrooms means everybody belongs, everybody has equal access to educational opportunities, and has the ability to reach the outcomes. Okay, key elements in differentiated instruction include assessing students. So this is directly connected to formative assessment, right? We're assessing students as they're learning so that we can change our instruction to best meet their needs. So formative assessment and differentiated instruction go hand in hand. Okay, so we're assessing students' readiness. Are they able to complete the tasks that we're asking them to complete? We're assessing their interests. Are they interested in the topics that we're presenting? And we're assessing their learning profiles, which is how they learn, their learning styles. Okay, and then based on that, we're adapting instruction. So we're adapting content, process, product based on those aspects. Okay, so differentiated instruction is a responsive teaching approach. So it's responsive based on the situation that's in front of you. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? It's responsive based on the students that you have, based on their needs. Okay, so it's flexible, inclusive, and responsive. So you adjust your techniques without changing the objectives. So you still want everybody to meet the same goals, the same objectives, but you have to help students in different ways to reach those goals. Or you have to provide your instruction in different formats that helps the learning styles of different students. Okay, so the rationale for differentiation is really based on observation of what classes are like. Okay, so real world situations. So students are not the same. They don't learn in the same way. They have different language levels in classes, right? So it's very rare to find a language classroom where everybody's at the same level, right? That doesn't happen. So every room in some way needs some adjustment in instruction to meet the needs of different levels. Okay, students also vary in confidence, right? In their focus, especially in their focus on certain types of tasks. Okay, so a one-size-fits-all instruction doesn't work. It leaves students behind. Okay, or it works for some, we could say, but it leaves others behind. Okay, so some learners would struggle, others would disengage or check out of instruction if it's too advanced beyond their level. Okay, so differentiation increases access. So you're matching the support to students' readiness. And then as a result, all students can reach the objectives or can succeed. Okay, 4 pillars of differentiation. Are we familiar with these? Yes? Okay, so content, process, product, environment, right? These are things that can be modified or changed within a classroom, right? Content, process, product, environment. So how you access the information, how the content or how the input is presented, right? Process, how students make meaning, so what they're doing with the content. Product is how you produce or how you show what you've learned, okay, exhibiting learning. And then environment, so the classroom environment. Okay, so different ways that you can differentiate. So teachers can differentiate content, process, product, learning environment, right? According to these different student characteristics. So student readiness, so their level, in other words, their readiness to do the task that you're asking them to do. Their interests, so whether they're interested in the task or the content that you're talking about. And then learning profile. So learning profile is learning style, right? Whether they're an auditory learner, they like to read and write, they like hands-on activities or kinesthetic. Okay, so maybe we'll skip the discussion and we'll move on to some examples just for time, okay? Okay, so content differentiation. So this is how students access information. So it's the input that you're providing, right? In your instruction, you have to have input, output, feedback, rehearsal, opportunities for all of those things for meaningful language development, okay? So tiered texts is one way of differentiating content. So using reading materials that are of the same topic, but they're at different levels. Okay, visual input. So visual input could be using graphics, using graphic organizers, using pictures to accompany text. So that supports different learning styles. Vocabulary support. These are just some examples, yeah? Yeah. So vocabulary support, pre-teaching or providing additional vocabulary support. Maybe the vocabulary is familiar to some of the students, but it's not to others, right? So you have to have some vocabulary support either through pre-teaching or as an accompaniment to the activity that you're doing. So that would be content. So process differentiation is how the students are making sense of the process or what they're doing with the content. So flexible groupings. Groupings can really be part of the process and also the learning environment. So using flexible groupings, we talked a little bit about whether you're pairing students of the same ability or you're using pairs where they have a mixed ability, right? Both serve different purposes. But being able to have students interact with different groups of students or different classmates. Using sentence frames or starters. So if you're asking a question to your class, some of your students might be able to freely give a response, while others need that stem to get the response going, right? So providing a stem for those that need it, right? Or a sentence starter for those that need it, and then leaving it open for students who don't need that. Okay. Learning centers. So learning centers would be also connected to learning environment. So you would have different tasks for different students. So you would situate a classroom where some students could be working on one thing while other students could be working on something else. So you're changing what the students are working on. So product is how the students are showing that they've learned. Are they writing a paper, giving a presentation? Are they just doing something visually, creating a collage? Okay. So choice boards is a way of having students choose how they want to produce their language or what they've acquired or what they're supposed to show. So, for example, students could choose creating a poster, giving a presentation, writing a paragraph to show that they understand this concept. Okay. Okay, differentiated assessments. So maybe you're using different ways of assessing students as well. And learning environment. So the first idea here we touched on a little bit already, creating a safe atmosphere or a safe, inclusive learning environment. So it's very important for students to understand that making errors within the classroom is not only okay, but it's necessary. You have to make errors in order to get feedback and to revise those errors. Okay, so making that very clear and creating that safe environment is important. Flexible groupings and seatings. So using pair work, group work, being able to move between different groups. And then creating structured work zones. So in one portion of the room, it could just be a quiet place to work independently. In another portion of the room, it could be a place to work collaboratively with your classmates. So not every student has to be doing the same thing in the same space, right? Use the space to meet the different needs. Okay, do we have any questions or comments? We also can use Padlet, right, for ongoing questions. And then we can do that kind of outside of our shared time. Okay, I'm going to get to, oh, yeah, question.
Sorry, for me, what I'm sharing with my students, because we have to work in the two extreme. We have the what we call sekolah kurang murid, and we have the 50 students in the classroom. So the adaptability in the learning environment for me very important. And then I think this is one thing that we need to help especially the teachers the students teacher to help to adapt to this kind of environment. Because we have certain schools, we have, for example, maybe 5 in the classroom, and the next one, we have 50 students in the classroom. So the learning environment can be really challenging, especially for the students teacher to adapt to this kind of differentiated learning. Okay, just by sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, so some physical environments are harder to modify, right? Maybe you can't move the desks or the tables, right? Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, time to get up and move a little bit. So we're going to do walk, stop, talk. Walk, stop, talk, and it's related to differentiated instruction. So you're going to be walking freely around the room. Just walk. I think we have enough space where you can walk. You can come up here and walk around, walk through the aisles, okay? When you're told to stop, you're going to find whoever is closest to you, and that's going to be your conversation partner. Okay. And then I'll give you a prompt. So I'll give you a question to talk about, and then we'll repeat. Okay. So this is a way where you can interact with different people. You've been sitting in one area of the room. You've been working with your one group the whole time. Let's mingle a little bit. Talk to other people. Okay. Okay, so everybody stand up so you can walk. Okay, just walk, walk, walk. Walk around. And stop. So whoever is next to you is your conversation partner. And here's your prompt. Yeah, so discuss the question and the prompt with your partner. Okay, let's walk again. Okay, move around, walk, walk, walk. Yeah. Okay, stop. There's a new prompt, so discuss the new question. Okay, let's walk again. Walk, walk, walk. Keep walking. Okay, and stop. Should be a new partner, new conversation partner. New question to discuss with a new partner. Okay, when you're done speaking with this partner, you can return to your seat. Okay, let's return to your original seat. So from your discussions and conversations with various participants, if you have some considerations or tips that you'd like to share or you think would be helpful for many people, you can share that through Padlet. Okay, if you have any insights to share, considerations or tips, you can share them in the Padlet section for differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction can be overly complicated in some ways, right? If we try to differentiate everything at the same time, it's too much, right? It takes too much time to prepare, and then it's oftentimes not necessary, okay? So we can be strategic in how we approach differentiated instruction, okay? So having these different considerations doesn't mean you're applying it all at once, right? So of course you have to understand your students and understand their needs, but if you start to create lessons that are addressing different learning styles, then you can present those lessons for multiple groups of students. If you present a lesson that has video or visual accompaniment to text, that's going to benefit every class, okay? So that prep you've done one time, right? So of course that does take time to prepare, but then you can recycle those things that you've created, okay? So you're not renewing your plan for every new group necessarily. That's not what DI means, right? But you're preparing lessons that meet the learning styles of diverse learners, okay? So when you create a lesson plan, you have that in mind, right? And then you're assessing your particular students and their levels, and then you're catering instruction to that as well. So then you can build on what you've already prepared, if that makes sense. Okay, because one of the challenges in DI is preparation, right? Being able to prepare. Okay, so if we think of some of the warm-up activities that we've done two. So we've done in common and not, and we've done pass the mic. Okay, you've experienced it. If you consider a class of diverse learners, let's say they're mixed ability, right? So mixed English level. How could we differentiate these tasks? Okay, so we can think about the models that we've already discussed, so content, process, product, learning environment, and then according to readiness, their level, interests, and learning profile. So I want you to just choose one of these two and think about how would you differentiate it? How would you modify it so that it could fit the needs? Because the way that I presented it was just kind of a basic model, right? But of course, there's many different ways that you could do it. Okay. Could you think about that and then share some insights, share some ideas that you have just with the person next to you? Okay, so you've come up with some ideas just talking with a partner or a few people around you. Okay, if we had done this as a small group, like at a table, then we could do like a 4 stray, 1 stay model. Okay, are we familiar with that? Okay, so we can interact with different group members in so many different ways, right? Okay, would anybody like to share how you would differentiate one of these warm-up activities?
Okay, all right. Good morning. Okay, the activity that I discussed with Mr. Ng just now is pass the mic. It's basically the same idea, but it's just that it's more of like a chain storytelling. For example, we use the same visual, and then maybe the first student can start describing the picture, start with the first sentence, and then the second student, carry on with the second sentence so that they form a story. Let's say we are having a weaker students, perhaps we can provide them with some sentence starters or even some adjectives, some vocabulary to help them. Okay, for the good students, perhaps we can add on more pictures, more visuals so that they can expand the ideas. So that's how we modified that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So using the pictures, but kind of creating a different activity as well. Okay, so you could even combine the pictures do multiple activities with the same pictures. So then you're recycling the vocabulary that you're using, right? You're creating a story first maybe, and then you're asking questions about it afterwards. Once they know the vocabulary, right? Once they know what's happening in the scene. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
That's okay. So we were discussing about in common and not. And when we were doing the activity earlier, it was quite challenging even for us as adults to find points to differentiate and to find the points that we have in common. So maybe we can, to help the students, we can list a few ideas that they can find. Maybe we mentioned colors, we mentioned about favorite food maybe, so it can help them to come up with ideas faster. Thank you.
Yeah, good. So you have some models, right? Maybe you have some topics about what you want them to discuss. You could even provide the actual questions that you want them to ask. Okay. For that kind of where you're comparing, you're showing similarities or differences, you could also represent that visually. So you could use like a Venn diagram that they have to complete, okay? And you could use a lot of different picture prompts. Yeah, so maybe you just have colors, right? And maybe they have to indicate which color is their favorite. Okay, so especially if they're lower level. Okay, thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, so we've got just a few minutes here before we're going to take a break for lunch. Okay, once again, you can use the activity tracker if you'd like to make some notes about different activities, especially if they're new for you and how you would modify them, how you'd use them in your own class or trainings. So the different activities that we did here were pass the mic, doing pair discussion, walk, stop, talk, 4 stay, 1 stray, 1 stay. Okay, not 4 stay, 1 stay. Then everybody's all the same. Okay, so you can use the activity tracker to make some notes about that if you'd like. Okay, and hopefully we have some time over lunch as well where we can go over any particular questions that you have, okay? Otherwise, feel free to add some of those questions to the question section in Padlet, right? And we can continue discussions that way. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Question. Yeah.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, it's okay. Right. Everything that we had done today, throughout this half day, it's very interesting. There are a lot of ideas that we have shared, and we've experienced quite a lot of things, some new, some existing knowledge to us. I'm looking at the point of view as from us ELTC. When we go to schools, teachers, they are very creative, most of them, and They have loads of ideas, and they have been doing a lot of activities, you know. The thing is, when we talk about formative assessment, sometimes they don't realize that the activities they are doing are actually formative assessment. Yeah, right. And they kind of, you know, when you go and you use this term formative assessment, some would react as though it's something new. Some would look a bit confused, and some, how do I say? They would actually ask questions also. So which form of which question or which form of activity is formative, which is summative? You know, they want that distinction. Is quiz summative? Is quiz formative? You know, that sort of thing. So coming back to that, I particularly like your one of your earlier slides where you have that 4 quadrants and that center bit where we look at how formative use of summative tests. Yeah, so that's the term we always use, formative use of summative tests, where it is a concept that needs to be clear to teachers. So that's one thing we find when we go to schools. It's very interesting that teachers, they know of the activities, they can do all the activities, but that concept somehow is missed somewhere, you know. So yeah, so they always want to know what is summative, which materials for summative, which is when they should actually understand that it's the intention of using that assessment itself brings back to whether it's formative or summative.
Okay, those are great points, yeah. And I think some of it is also, we can talk about the terms, right? Formative assessment and differentiated instruction. And a lot of times teachers are doing this intuitively or instinctively, right? So if we know that, we can build on the practices that they're already doing. The labeling is really not the point, right? So the point is equipping teachers with lots of different tools that they have, right? Lots of different activities and techniques that they can use. And then they're making the decisions about how to use those for their context. Yeah.
Can I just add something? I think normally when we deal with training, teacher training, it is daunting when we use these terms and our trainees or our teachers feel like it is very burdening. It's a huge task to ask from them due to the class size, the large class size, limited time in their schedule for the classes. So I think we need to assist the teachers in terms of the know-how, how to actually do this. Use of AI, for example, technology, will greatly assist the workload, to lessen the workload, to prepare materials that are leveled and the task as well. And I think less is more sometimes. You know, it feels very overwhelming when they think that it's a lot of things that you have to do, but maybe in a lesson, you just need to focus on 1 or 2 activity alone. And most of the time, when it comes to school-based assessment, most of our teachers are only looking at pen and paper type of assessment. You know, but actually as formative assessment can be observation, can be, you know, simple interview. As long as you are actually assessing something, you know, what is the objective? That is in itself assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, the assessment is giving you insights, right? Yeah. So using the term assessment, right, does trigger kind of a traditional way of thinking about testing for a lot of people. Okay. But if you can point out how teachers are already using these things, right? So then maybe it makes the terms a little less scary or intimidating. You're already doing these things, right? But here are maybe a few other techniques that you could try sometime. And it doesn't mean you're trying everything all at the same time, right? That's overwhelming. Nobody wants to do that. So you try maybe one new approach or technique, right? And then you can build upon that. Okay. Yeah, building confidence in the instructors and then seeing that it works, right? So seeing positive outcomes. So if you can apply something and you can see how it benefits your instruction and benefits how the students are learning, yeah, then you want to do it more, right? Yeah. So if it works, we keep doing it, right? If it doesn't work, yeah, why are we doing it? So there has to be, yeah, positive benefits to these. Okay, other comments?
Hello. Hi. Okay. We also need to understand the point of view of teachers at school. Yes, of course, they know maybe they are instinctively using formative assessments, but the fact is they are asked to do formative assessments as a replacement of the summative assessment that are no longer standardized, like PT3 or UPSR. So this formative assessment is taking the same priority level as those standardized tests. So they want it to be labeled because it needs to be served as an evidence of formative assessment being done in the classroom. So it becomes a burden to them when they have to create, because it needs to be an evidence. Most of the time, these formative assessments are done using like pen and paper, because it needs to be served as evidence. Why is the teacher giving this student this level 1, 2, 3, up until 6? That is one of the challenges that these teachers are facing because of formative assessments.
So they have to create their own assessments?
Since it's a formative assessment, right? Mm-hmm. The differentiated instruction can be a bit tricky for them because they need to prepare this for those students who have maybe different learning styles or anything. They want to be able to give, to show that these students achieve that standard. But what is the evidence? So they need to prepare those things.
Yeah, and the preparation can be heavy upfront, right? Especially. But then after you've done that for different levels, then you can recycle some of those things for other classes, right? So you can use it in your next class. So you've already spent the time developing these materials for different levels. Yeah, some of the materials generation is a little faster or easier because we have the assistance, of different tools. Yes, exactly. So if you have communities of practice where you can, share and collaborate, yes, that helps reduce the time that one person is spending on generating everything. Great. Great points. Okay. Okay, so I think we're going to take our lunch break next. Okay.